Cringe intro. Hi, my name is Maria and welcome back to Masha Talks. I finally decided that it's high time to talk about Sally Rooney! So, I'm sure you've all heard about Sally Rooney. She is like the voice of this generation. She's so famous, and obviously Normal People is, I'd say, one of her most famous works, and they even made a TV show about it. But the most important part is that Sally Rooney is an Irish woman herself. And as a fellow Irish woman, I had never read her books until recently, when I decided to go on a Sally Rooney binge because I was gifted her books for Christmas and my birthday. I read 3 of her books consecutively, and I know she has a bigger discography than 3 books. I think she has 2 more books, like 2 stories and Beautiful World, Where Are You?, which I did not read because nobody gave them to me. But I think I am qualified enough to talk about her, even though I've only read 3 books. So the first Sally Rooney book I read was Intermezzo, which is her latest one that just came out a couple of months ago. Now, maybe it wasn't the best book to start off with her because I'd say it's the most experimental out of all the books that I've read. The markers of Sally Rooney's style would be that she doesn't use quotation marks, is what I've noticed in all 3 of her books, which is interesting. I mean, other books do this as well, like Requiem of a Dream. I'm all for experimentation with prose style and format. I read in one of her interviews that she is very inspired by previous works, so she like references or copies the format. So I read that for Intermezzo, she kind of copied the format of the Ulysses, which is another famous Irish book, which I have somewhere. I can't be bothered to find. And I haven't read the Ulysses, but I've skimmed through it. Sorry, I'm not reading that book. It's a behemoth. But I can see that her style is mimicking the Ulysses, which I think is pretty interesting, especially because she's an Irish author. He was an Irish author, so I think that's pretty cool. So Intermezzo was very interesting. It was my first tippy toe submerging into Sally Rooney's world of writing. So reading Intermezzo, it did take me a while to get into it. I'd say like the first third of the book I was reading really slowly and I was not picking it up as much because there's a lot of dense text, and sometimes if I was not in the right frame of mind, it was hard to grasp the way Sally Rooney writes because it's so like minute. It's kind of like slice of life, the genre that she writes about, and the details are so intricate. Like she really captures a portrait of a person and their personality, which I do enjoy, but sometimes when you're not in the mood for that kind of reading, it's very hard to grasp. So I think I was quite unused to it. So the first 1/3 of the book I was like slowly getting into it, and then girl, it picked up so fast and I finished the book really quickly after that. Intermezzo is about 2 brothers. One is Ivan Kubek and the other guy is Peter Kubek. Peter Kubek is a lawyer and he lives in Dublin and he's very rich basically. And Ivan Kubek is this fucking weird like nerdy boy with braces who's 23 or so and he just graduated school and he's very broke. But basically their father dies and they're both experiencing the grief of that happening and how they process this grief, and they both get intermingled into relationships. Peter Kubek has these 2 girls that he's in love with and he has to try and navigate who he loves more and how he wants to end up with his life. And Ivan Kubek ends up dating a much older woman than him. I think she is 30, she's 36. So he's dating a 36 or 38. He's dating a 38-year-old woman when he is 23. Dun, dun, dun. A very interesting premise, but at the same time, not much happens in Intermezzo. It's more so how the characters interact with each other and what they think. And I actually really like that. It creates this kind of lullaby sort of feeling and you just get entrenched into a window of someone's life basically. I think I'm describing this really badly, but I really enjoy that when books, nothing like big happens. Well, obviously the death of their father was big, but I like looking at how characters and people, because they felt like real people, they were so well portrayed and well developed and all. And it's very interesting seeing how these real people would interact. So that is what I really enjoyed about Intermezzo. Any criticisms I would have of this book would be, maybe this is a weird thing to say, but when I was reading it, it felt like, I don't know how to explain, but it kind of felt like I was reading a Murakami book. You know the way Murakami writes about women? I kind of felt the same way when I was reading Intermezzo because I know that the 2 protagonists are male and everything is from their perspective. So maybe that's props to Sally Rooney herself as a writer, that she was able to make me feel that way. But I don't know, like the way they describe the women and the sex that they had, it's just very questionable, might I say. Especially Peter, like he's such a weird guy. All his fucking weird thoughts, like thinking about dominating this younger college kid that he's seeing. I think it's really hard to critique books because I understand what the author was trying to do. You know, like he's a complex man, but I think I have the right to say that I was a bit weirded out by that. So even if that was the point or not, I thought it was quite interesting, and perhaps like the dynamics made me a bit slightly uncomfortable. And then when I read more of her books, I realized that this is actually a common theme. Maybe Sally Rooney likes exploring this power imbalance dynamics in male-female relationships, especially in the bedroom, which I will talk about more. The next book that I read by Sally Rooney was Normal People, which is probably the most famous one. I think everybody on this whole world has read it, and I finally caught up. And I have to be honest, like I love Normal People. It was so good. I haven't watched the show, but I read the book in 2 days. I just like fucking could not put it down. I think that Sally Rooney's prose in this, it's less stream of conscious as Intermezzo. Intermezzo is more like literally just word farts, which is cool. It's like somebody's internal monologue constantly, but I think I appreciate this style a bit more because it's more, I don't know, cohesive, I'd say. Like it's less internal monologue, like still there's a lot of thinking and reflection, but I think it's just a bit more easier to read than Intermezzo. Personally, that's what I feel. Well, the two characters are from Sligo, which, interesting story, I actually went to Sligo, so you can watch that video if you want. It was a really cool experience being in Sligo while I was reading the book, because the whole time I was like, wow, this is so cool. We literally went to the same places that is described in the goddamn book. Which is another thing I really like about reading Irish authors, especially Sally Rooney, because she makes Dublin and Ireland seem so interesting and complex and aesthetic, really, and I personally have never felt that way about Ireland, so it's kind of fun. Like it's made me appreciate my city more, if I'm gonna be honest. And like they mentioned books, shops that I know, and I'm like, oh my god, I've been there, so it's kind of a cool experience. So the premise of Normal People is that Marianne and Connor, they have a very complex intertwined relationship over the course of many years, starting in high school and then developing all the way throughout college. In high school, Marianne is like this loser who everybody hates, and Connor is like this popular kid. So they end up hooking up, and Connor never acknowledges her outside of the bedroom, which is so fucked up. But then they end up going to college where the roles kind of reverse. Marianne becomes the popular, cool girl, and Connor is kind of the loser. And they're both in Trinity together, and then they become friends, and over the course of many years, they're like drawn to each other, they can't escape, they love each other. But it's so complicated. I really enjoyed their complex dynamic. The only thing that I would say probably irked me is that how vulnerable Marianne always was. Like she's vulnerable in her home life, she's vulnerable with Connor as well in her relationship with him, because she's constantly submitting to him. I know they like that, they're freaky little kinky sex addicts, which props to them. I don't know, it just felt like Marianne was always losing out. Like Connor always had the upper hand, which is probably how their dynamic was meant to be portrayed, but I just felt a bit sorry for Marianne. Like they're both very sad, vulnerable people, and they just ended up together and they're perfect for each other in a way. But I just always thought that Marianne, she was too self-sacrificing when it came to Connor, you know, and that's probably the whole point of the book, but that is a criticism that I think I will say. In Normal People, I really enjoyed Sally Rooney's prose. I read it so fast. I think it was written so incredibly beautifully. The misunderstanding and the miscommunications between the characters, so frustrating. It really draws you in, really makes you root for them. And I was like fucking rooting for these people. I became so invested in their lives as well, just because Sally Rooney is so skilled at creating meaningful, in-depth character portrayals of people, which I loved. Normal People was chef's kiss. The last book that I read, which was actually Sally Rooney's debut novel, is Conversations with Friends, which by the way I think is a really bad title. Like that's a horrible title. Like Conversations with Friends. I don't know, if Sally Rooney didn't have that kind of prestige that she does have now, I don't know if I would pick this up just seeing it on the shelf. It kind of sounds boring. Oops, sorry. But Conversations with Friends was interesting because it's the first time that I've read her with a female protagonist, but again, the female protagonist ends up having a relationship with a married man who is decades older than her. So I'm sensing a theme here. Connell and Marianne were the only people who had the same age gap, whereas in these two books there was like very questionable age gaps. Sally Rooney has these themes that she likes to play around. I think one of them is class conflict, so there's always the contrast between a wealthy upper class family and then working class. She talks about that a lot in all three of these books actually. It's one of the pivoting antagonisms for the characters, is that the right word? Another similar theme throughout the novels is that all the female characters are almost unlikable. They're so complex and they're always kind of cold and feel like a little bit unlovable or introverts, which I quite like. Like that's, I think, is a pretty accurate portrayal of coming of age women, and I like that they're unlikable and more complex. I'd say a common theme in her books is kinky sex between men and women. I kid you not, in each three of these books, I'm not even joking, is the line when they're having sex in all three books, in three different scenarios, instances, each girl character says, "Can you hit me?" Which I'm like, okay. I feel like these girls are just so broken and they just let these men take advantage of them. And it's kind of sad reading it. It's kind of sad. Do I relate? Potentially. Yeah, no, obviously it's a nuanced and interesting depiction, but sometimes I'm like, who is this for? Like, who's the target demographic? It feels a bit male gazy. I don't know if I am saying that right or not. Sometimes it felt like it was catering towards a male reader, but maybe I'm wrong in saying that. I don't know, it's just kind of how I felt. I did like all three books, okay? I really liked them. I literally read them so quickly, and I do want to read Beautiful World, Where Are You? And I hope she writes way more books because I love her prose style. And I do like the kinky sex that they have. It's interesting to read about. Admitting to liking smut online, my god. I think that's overall all my opinions on Sally Rooney. This video is pretty uncohesive. It's more of a rant. I really enjoyed her writing. Like, I think it's really beautiful and addicting. Honestly, I kind of want to read Normal People all over again, and I'm definitely going to watch the TV show. Those are the only criticisms I have, really, just the male gazy part, but even that I can understand and didn't take away from the book at all. I still enjoyed it. The only part where I didn't feel that was in Intermezzo, when the older brother, the lawyer rich guy, he is in a relationship with a 23-year-old college girl. She's the only time that I felt like it was the most male gazy of all three of the novels that I read, because she just felt like his little plaything, and I think she was a bit underdeveloped as a character. Like, we didn't get to know more about her. She just felt like a male gaze fantasy kind of, because she was into kinky sex and she was a really beautiful, outgoing party girl who let like Peter do whatever he wanted to her, which would be interesting if she was more developed as a character, because then I wouldn't feel like she's just being taken advantage of. That's the only part in like her three novels that I felt like commits that crime the most. Whereas in these two, it's all the characters are much more developed and nuanced, and it's just a facet of themselves and what they're experiencing, what they're going through, so it doesn't feel so taken advantage of or male gazy. I think that sums up cohesively what I think of Sally Rooney. I really love her and I'm proud of my fellow Irish woman. I'm a big stan. I hope she writes more. I'll be first in line to purchase her books, and if she ever, God willing, does like a book signing in Hodges and Figgis, I'll be first in line. I'll be first in line and she'll sign all three of them. So thank you so much for watching, and I know this was very ranty, but I just wanted to get these thoughts off my chest. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!